trashed by more people or anything like that?
It's not trashed by more people.
When Quentin Tarantino cuts someone out of his world, it never happens quietly, politely, or over time. It happens like a detonation, sudden and irreversible. Because Tarantino doesn't believe in fading relationships out, he believes in erasing them. And that philosophy has shaped not only how his films are made, but who survives inside his cinematic universe. Loyalty to him is not emotional or personal. It's creative, structural, absolute, and the moment that loyalty fractures, even slightly, the response is not compromise but removal. Because Tarantino's films are not collaborations in the traditional sense, they are authored worlds, and every actor who enters them is expected to surrender ego, rhythm, and control. For more than 30 years, he's built a legacy on that rule, crafting films that feel alive because every moving part obeys the same vision. But when someone challenges that authority, even unintentionally, the clash is never subtle. It's explosive, public, and final. And the stories you're about to hear aren't about petty grudges or Hollywood gossip. They're about what happens when star power collides with a director who refuses to bend. Because in Tarantino's universe, stepping out of sync doesn't just cost you a role, it costs you existence. Lawrence Tierney. Lawrence Tierney was cast in Reservoir Dogs because he embodied danger before he spoke a word, a relic of classic noir whose presence alone carried menace, and for young Tarantino directing his first feature, Tierney felt like legitimacy. But the reality behind the camera was chaos. Because Tierney didn't just bring intensity, he brought volatility, forgetting lines, snapping at crew members, arguing with Tarantino, and turning every shooting day into a gamble where no one knew if the scene would finish before another explosion. And the breaking point came during a blocking argument when Tierney lost control, stormed off set, and was followed by Tarantino, who fired him immediately without hesitation, later describing the experience as dealing with a relative who couldn't be trusted to stay stable, a comment other cast members quietly confirmed, with Michael Madsen later admitting Tierney's presence poisoned the atmosphere. And for Tarantino, the decision wasn't just practical, it was personal because he had written the role for Tierney, admired him, and expected discipline. But when the energy turned toxic, Tarantino severed the connection completely, and after Reservoir Dogs became a cult classic, Tierney's name vanished from Tarantino's reflections entirely. No stories, no tributes, no mentions, as if crossing that line didn't just get you fired, it erased you from history. Bruce Willis. When Pulp Fiction exploded in 1994, it didn't just redefine independent cinema, it resurrected careers, and for Bruce Willis it should have been a turning point. Yet behind the scenes, something between Willis and Tarantino never aligned, because Willis came from a world where stars improvise, bend scripts, and dominate sets, while Tarantino's world is built on precision, rhythm, and obedience to the written word. And that friction created an invisible wall, with crew members noting that Willis felt distant, self-aware, and unwilling to fully disappear into the character, a fatal flaw in Tarantino's eyes, especially when contrasted with actors like Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson who surrendered completely. And while there was no public blow-up, no screaming match, no dramatic firing, the aftermath was louder than any argument, because Willis was never invited back, never referenced fondly, never absorbed into the rotating ensemble Tarantino is famous for reusing. And even years later, Tarantino praises Pulp Fiction without circling Willis's contribution, while Willis himself remained diplomatic but strangely detached, never celebrating the film as a major comeback. And in Tarantino's universe, that mutual silence speaks louder than open conflict, because it signals a quiet decision that this relationship didn't deserve continuation. George Clooney. On paper, George Clooney and Tarantino should have been allies, and their collaboration on From Dusk Till Dawn proved they could coexist. But respect collapsed publicly when Tarantino later dismissed Clooney outright, declaring that he wasn't a movie star and challenging audiences to name great performances beyond his charm, a statement that wasn't subtle, ironic, or playful, but blunt and dismissive, prompting Clooney to respond offensively by listing his acclaimed films. Yet the damage was irreversible, because Tarantino's criticism wasn't about box office or awards. It was about essence, about Clooney carrying polished Hollywood charisma into roles rather than disappearing into danger and grime. And from that moment forward, Clooney vanished from Tarantino's vocabulary entirely. No cameos, no reunions, no script offers, despite Tarantino's habit of recycling actors across decades. And Clooney moved on to massive success while Tarantino never looked back, because in his mind, Clooney didn't fit the violent, obsessive, raw energy his films demand, and dismissal for Tarantino is far worse than conflict. Spike Lee. The feud between Tarantino and Spike Lee was never about ego alone. It was ideological, explosive, and permanent, beginning when Lee publicly criticized Tarantino's repeated use of racial slurs in Jackie Brown, accusing him of obsession and cultural overreach. comments Tarantino responded to with open hostility, insisting no artist had the right to police another's voice. And the tension escalated into outright war with Django Unchained, which Lee condemned without watching, calling it disrespectful to his ancestors, prompting Tarantino to retaliate with one of the most inflammatory statements of his career, claiming Lee was angry because Tarantino was making the films Lee wished he could make, a line that cemented the divide forever, because from that moment on there was no possibility of reconciliation, collaboration, or mutual acknowledgement. And despite both men operating at the highest level of filmmaking, their worlds never intersected again. No panels, no praise, no professional overlap, proving that when Tarantino decides someone has crossed an ideological line, he doesn't debate it, he ends the relationship entirely. Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi helped define Tarantino's early identity as Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs, delivering one of the most iconic monologues in independent film history. Yet despite that loyalty and success, Buscemi was never invited back, and while theories ranged from scheduling conflicts to creative differences, the most persistent story involved a real-life disagreement about tipping that mirrored the film's opening scene, allegedly frustrating Tarantino enough to quietly sour the relationship. Unlike explosive fallouts, this one faded into absence, with Tarantino later brushing off questions by saying some people only get one shot, a cold answer considering how many other Reservoir Dogs actors became regulars, and Buscemi never complained publicly, instead building a legendary career elsewhere, while fans noticed his complete disappearance from Tarantino's casting radar, because in this universe, silence isn't accidental, it's intentional. Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty was nearly Bill in Kill Bill, a role Tarantino wrote with him in mind, shaping the character's philosophical menace around Beatty's legendary presence. But the collaboration collapsed before filming began when Beatty, himself a director, began offering suggestions, edits, and tonal shifts that Tarantino interpreted as threats to authorship. Because for Tarantino, Kill Bill was not a shared vision but a revenge opera with a single conductor. And according to those involved, the tension was immediate and absolute, leading Tarantino to quietly replace Beatty without public drama, later explaining only that he needed someone who understood it wasn't their story, a sentence that revealed everything about how power functions in his world. And Beatty never spoke out, never retaliated, simply vanished from Tarantino's orbit forever, proving that even icons aren't immune when creative control is questioned. In Quentin Tarantino's universe, talent opens the door, but loyalty decides who stays, and once that loyalty fractures, there are no second chances, no reconciliations, no nostalgic reunions, just absence. Because Tarantino doesn't negotiate authorship, doesn't dilute vision, and doesn't forgive disruption, and that's why his films feel singular, controlled, and dangerous. But it's also why so many powerful names became ghosts in his history, erased not because they failed, but because they refused to submit. In a town built on second chances, Tarantino's clean breaks are rare, brutal, and unforgettable.